Hello, you are welcome to the Study Abroad Hub. If this is your first time visiting this channel, the Study Abroad Hub family warmly welcome you to this channel. Do you know that on the 22nd of January 2024, Canada has put a cap to the number of international students that they will be admitting? That is, if you check, the policy clearly states that there will be a 35% reduction in the number of international students that it took in 2023. What does this policy imply for schools and scholarship applications to Canada, study permit approval, and the ability of a graduate and the ability of students to actually invite their spouse to join them in Canada? If you want to know more about this policy, follow me into the next section where I will dissect the policy and give you its practical implications and how you can navigate around this policy to make sure that you succeed in your applications. Once again, before we go to the next section, I will kindly entreat you that if this is your first time, you kindly like our videos, you subscribe and press on the notification so that anytime we post information like this, you get to update yourself and know what is happening. Follow to the next section as I dissect this policy to tell you its implication on schools and scholarship applications to Canada, its implication on the study permit approval this year, and its implication on your ability to invite or to go with your spouse.
You are welcome to this section of the video. You can see that this information is from the Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. That is the IRCC Canada. This is their official website. And then the topic is Canada to stabilize growth and decrease number of new international students. You can see that on January 22nd, 2024, Ottawa. International students enrich our communities and are a critical part of Canada's social, cultural, and economic fabric. In recent years, the integrity of the international students system has been threatened. Some institutions have significantly increased their intake to drive revenues, and more students have been arriving in Canada without the proper support they need to succeed. Rapid increase in the number of international students arriving in Canada also put pressure on housing, healthcare, and other services as we work to better protect international students from bad actors and support sustainable population growth in Canada. The government is moving forward with measures to stabilize the number of international students in Canada. So the policy document is saying that the inflow of international students into Canada is actually creating pressure on their housing system, their healthcare, and other services. In Canada, there are some schools that do not offer postgraduate work permit upon completion. These schools are usually private schools. So what they do is that these private schools that officially, if you attend them, they cannot give you a postgraduate work permit. They agree with the public universities and they outsource some courses to these private universities so that when you do those courses or when you go through those courses at the private university that cannot offer you a postgraduate work permit upon completion because they have agreed with the public university or a university that gives postgraduate work permit upon completion, then you can be able to apply for the postgraduate work permit. So this is what actually they want to avoid. This is what actually they want to avoid. So, because the public universities are outsourcing some of the courses to the private universities, it means that they have widened the intake because the same program can be taken in the public university and the same program can be taken in the private university that they have license to offer such courses. So, let's go on. You see that the Honorable Mark Miller, Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, announced today that the government of Canada will set an intake cap on international students' permit application to stabilize new growth for a period of 2 years. For 2024, the cap is expected to result in approximately steady permit, a decrease of 35% from 2023. In the spirit of fairness, individual province and territorial caps have been established weighted by population, which will result in much more significant decrease in provinces where the international students population has seen the most unsustainable growth. Study permit renewals will not be impacted. Those pursuing master's and doctoral degrees and elementary and secondary education are not included in the cap. Currently, study permit holders will not be affected. So what this paragraph simply means that this year or in the next 2 years, that is 2024 and 2025, it is expected that 360,000 study permits will be approved. So this will also differ across the provinces. So provinces that they have higher population, it means that students who will apply for visa to go and study in those provinces, there will be a lot of rejections against provinces that have lower populations. So this means that application to study in Canada, you should be careful. You have to make a lot of research to know provinces with lower population, because these are the provinces that if you apply or if you submit application to the RRCC and they notice that you are applying to go to a certain area with lower population, then there's a higher possibility that your study permit will be granted. So you should just have this in mind when you are searching for your schools in Canada. Because for me, I know that some province like Saskatchewan, it's a very big province, almost 3 times the size of Ghana, with a very less population. So if you're applying for schools in this area, there's a higher possibility that if you apply for the study permit upon admission, you are likely to get the study permit. So you have to keep this in mind, and this is one of the smart ways that you can navigate around this policy to get what you want. LCC will allocate portion of the cap to each province and territory, who will then distribute the allocation among their designated learning institutions. To implement the cap, as of January 22nd, 2024, every study permit application submitted to IRCC will also require an attestation letter for a province or a territory. Provinces and territories are expected to establish a process for issuing attestation letters to students by no later than March. So this also means that it is expected that by 31st March, if you're applying for a study permit in Canada, you will need an attestation letter. I will come back in the next video to also dissect this for you to know exactly what is going to happen in regards to the attestation letters. And these temporary measures will be in place for 2 years, and the number of new permit applications that will be accepted in 2025 will be reassessed at the end of this year. During this period, the Government of Canada will continue to work with provinces and territories, designated learning institutions, and national education stakeholders on developing a sustainable path forward for international students, including finalizing a recognized institution framework, determining a long-term sustainable level of international students, and ensuring postgraduate institutions are able to provide adequate levels of student housing. Let's go further. He said that in order to better align for postgraduate work permit program, we are changing the eligibility criteria. So this is where actually the whole game changes, because from the up to the down, it's basically telling you that if you are applying for other programs, or if you're applying to study other programs other than master's or doctoral program, you'll be affected by this policy. And to make sure that the policy really achieve its goal, they are rescheduling the eligibility criteria for postgraduate work permit. What is postgraduate work permit? Postgraduate work permit is simply a permit granted to students who have studied upon completing their programs in Canada to be able to work freely towards getting a permanent residence in Canada. So the eligibility criteria is going to change. And what are these? He said that start September 1st, 2024, international students who begin a study program that is part of curriculum licensing arrangement will no longer be eligible for a postgraduate work permit upon graduation. I've already dealt with this. So if you are applying to a private school that officially cannot grant a study work permit, but the program, because they are licensed under a public university, formally they could grant you a postgraduate work permit. But in this policy, now if you attend such a university or if you do such a course, you will not be qualified to apply for a postgraduate work permit. Now the question will be, how can I be able to determine, or how can I be able to know the universities that I should apply for, that upon completion I will not have problems getting my postgraduate work permit? In my next video, I will teach you how to fish out these universities, the universities that if you attend, you are likely not to be given a postgraduate work permit because it is licensed under a public university. So watch out for the next video after this video. I said, under curriculum licensing agreement, students physically attend a private college that has been licensed to deliver the curriculum of an associate public college. These programs have seen significant growth in attracting international students in recent years, though they have less oversight than public colleges and they act as a loophole with regards to postgraduate work permit eligibility. Now, graduate of master's degree program will soon be eligible to apply for a 3-year work permit. This is very interesting. So, if you attend a public university in Canada and upon your completion, you'll be given a 3-year work permit. And within these 3 years, you are expected to get all the requirement, or you are expected to elevate yourself or to position yourself well in order to apply for a permanent residence in Canada. Under current criteria, the length of a postgraduate work permit is based solely on the length of an individual study program, hindering master's graduate by limiting the amount of time they have to gain work experience and potentially transition to permanent resident. So formally, if you do a 1-year master's program in Canada, you are given a 1-year postgraduate work permit. But if you do 2 years postgraduate, if you do 2 years master's studies in Canada, then you'll be given a 3-year postgraduate work permit. So that's why the policy document states that formally the granting of this 3 years postgraduate work permit was solely based on the length of an individual study program. But going forward, for me, although it's not explicitly stated in this document, but I expect that going forward, that if you do a 1-year program or a 2-year program in a designated public university that has the ability to grant you a postgraduate work permit, then I think you should be given the 3 years postgraduate work permit. So this is a big announcement, and this is very interesting. The last bit said, in the weeks ahead, open work permit will only be available to spouses of international students in master's and doctoral programs. So this is also very restrictive. And the spouse of international students in other level of study, including undergraduate and college programs, will no longer be eligible. So what does this imply? Formally, if you apply for a bachelor's study program in Canada and you have a wife, you can equally take your wife along. If you apply for certificate programs in the colleges and other programs like other study levels, then you can equally take your spouse along, or you can equally invite your spouse along. They'll be given an open work permit so that they can work and help support you in the study program. But currently, they are scrubbing all this off and they've limited it to only masters and PhD students. What does this imply? This implies that if you attend a college, or if you go to any college in Canada that do not offer that, number one, is not a public institution. Number two, they've not given it the official ability to grant you a postgraduate work permit after graduating from the program. And number three is not a master's or a PhD program. Then you are punishing yourself because likely your study permit will be refused. Number one. Number two, and even if you are granted upon your completion, then you are expected to return to your country because you cannot apply for the postgraduate work permit. So I want to highlight again that currently, per this policy document, only masters and PhD students can ask or can apply for their spouses to join them, number one. And number two, only masters and PhD students who have attended a public university or a university that is officially granted the ability that when students graduate from their programs, they can be able to apply for a postgraduate work permit. These are the people who will be granted a postgraduate work permit. So please take notice of this very well and then put it and then consider it in your decision making to study in Canada. Yes, we've come to the end of the policy document. So, just to summarize, this is telling us that in this year there's going to be a reduction in the study permit approval, which is 35%, and the cap figure is 360,000 permit will be granted. That is number one. Number two, if you are going to apply to any school in Canada that is not a public university, a public school, officially they've not granted that school that the ability that student graduating from that school will be given a steady a postgraduate work permit, then you are punishing yourself. So you should be able to determine, or you should be able to know the schools that are public universities in Canada and that have the ability to, and that upon completing, you will be able to apply for the postgraduate work permit. Like I said, in my next video, I'm going to teach you how to fish out schools that when you graduate from them, you are likely not to be given a postgraduate work permit. Number three is that if you apply to any program, let's say other than master's or PhD level studies, then you will face significant difficulties in asking or in applying for your spouses to join. So we've come to the end of this video, and watch out for my next video on the attestation and then on how to fish out schools to apply for, so that at the end of your studies, you will not find yourself wanting on regarding the postgraduate work permit. Thank you for staying with me to the end of this video, and we look forward to crossing your path again. Until then, we wish you the best.